Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Longhorn Confidential. It's that time of the week where we like to bring on an expert of the team that Texas is playing this week. So it's time to talk Mississippi State. We got Colin Damms of the Commercial Dispatch. He's here to talk about the Bulldogs. You can read Colin's work at cdispatch.com or follow him on Twitter this is a pretty cool handle here, at Colin the Shots 95. I guess I need something better to go with Danny, but Colin the Shots, that just needs to work pretty well. Colin, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Excited for another game. Things have been more down than up for Mississippi State so far in SEC play, but exciting one on Saturday and ready to talk about.
Yeah, let's just start right there. Mississippi State kind of surprised a lot of people. I mean, could get win of the season, last in the preseason poll, started 4-0, including a win over a good Arizona State team. That hasn't translated to SEC play. 0-3 after this past weekend's loss to Florida. Colin, why have things just not translated to SEC play? Why is that momentum from non-conference not carried over to conference play for the Bulldogs?
Well, I would say, and I think, on Monday, Mississippi State head coach Jeff Lebby was also saying that, some of those execution problems that popped up in the Arizona State game, especially in that third quarter and later in the second quarter, where the offense just isn't able to take control of games, that's really hindered Mississippi State in SEC play. We saw it against Tennessee, a very winnable game at home where your offense spots Tennessee 2 touchdowns with 2 turnovers, pick 6, and then a sack strip that was run back for a touchdown in the fourth quarter. And, that's just that's not winning football. It's not clean football, and you're spotting the other team 2 touchdowns. And that was a game where the Mississippi State defense has played pretty well. And they go into Aggie land against a really good A&M defense, and the Bulldog defense shows up again in the first half. They get a bunch of stops. They get an interception in the red zone. They also get a goal line stand in that first half, but Mississippi State only gets 3 points on offense. They're just constantly, still stuck in first gear, not able to move the ball. And again, it comes back to bite them. A&M wears down the defense and takes over the game. And then last week at Florida, opening drive, touchdown, and then the rest of the first half, they have 4 drives that get them into Florida territory, and they come away empty-handed on all of them with a fumble, a missed field goal, a turnover on downs. So execution issues on offense has really hindered them. I think the defense is better than a lot of people, even in Starkville, thought it was going to be this year, just based on last year and their inability to stop the run. But offensively, just have not been able to get things going when they have a chance to take over the game.
Overall, what's kind of the overall vibe, I guess, vibe check in Starkville? It's been kind of a weird past few years since Mike Leach's passing. I believe that was December of 2022. How are people feeling about the Bulldogs in the second year of the Jeff Lebby era?
I mean, there's definitely a recognition that this team is much better than it was last year. There were all sorts of issues in terms of talent gap, I think, between that Mississippi State team and a lot of the teams that they were playing, not just in SEC play, but, they go to Arizona State last year and they make a late push, but they lose that one 30-23. And then this year, they start 4-0 and things were really high, especially after the way that Arizona State game went. But, through 3 SEC games, 0-3, I think people recognize that, this is a tough division for anybody. Even going to a team like Florida that, fired its head coach the day after the Mississippi State game. You can't take anything for granted in this conference. And, at some point they've got to deliver wins. And, this is an SEC losing streak that goes beyond Jeff Lebby. It goes back to the year before his hiring in 2023. But he's got to deliver wins. And it's 15 games and counting now in SEC to play without a win for Mississippi State. And that's not a way that you survive.
Other things that is different for this Bulldog team, at least from the Texas angle, last year Blake Chapin was hurt and had already had his season-ending surgery. He's back this year. This is a veteran quarterback. He's also made some mistakes at the end of the Florida game. But is he, from a quarterback perspective, is he what this team needs at this point in the season, or is it time for the Bulldogs to start looking at the future, maybe looking at some younger players? Because obviously Blake is a 6-year guy who's not going to be around next year.
Yeah, I've covered Kamario Taylor in high school, all of his years as a starter, because he's a local kid out of Noxubee County. It's about 30 minutes down the road from here. And, I have no doubt in my mind that has the highest potential of any quarterback on this roster right now, just from what I've seen from him. But it's tough to throw a true freshman out there when you have somebody like Blake Shapen, who has played a lot of football, but has also played the style of offense that Levy brought to Starkville. He does what they want to do on offense, which is he can take shots downfield. He makes quick reads. He goes through progressions quickly. Sometimes to detriment because he doesn't scan the entire field sometimes, and sometimes those routes are very quick. Most of his throws are out into the flat, but he also takes a lot of shots downfield. And with receivers like Brenen Thompson and Anthony Evans, that's what you want to do, because they can stretch any defense and they're really dangerous with the ball in their hands. So I don't think that based on my observation and the way that, this team has talked about Blake and the way that Blake has talked about himself, they recognize their shortcomings over the last few games, but they also believe that he's a guy who can take them, where they need to go. He's certainly somebody that Levy trusts, somebody who he brought back for another year when he didn't need to. He could have, recognized the dangers last year after a 2-10 season and tried to dip back into the portal for somebody, or, even started Kamario Taylor sooner than maybe he should. But he's trusting Blake Shapen, and he can still deliver. He had his most prolific passing game against Florida, even without throwing a touchdown. That last mistake is obviously going to be the memorable moment from that game for him. But, he hit on those shots downfield. He had, I think, 8 explosive plays through the air, a lot of plays with 40+ air yards. So it's a tough one, but I mean, he's starting on Saturday, and I think the Bulldogs still have a really good chance to win with him.
You mentioned Brenen Thompson in your last answer. He's obviously someone who Texas fans should know. He spent his freshman year with the Longhorns as a Texas kid. It didn't work out for him. Went to Oklahoma for 2 years, and now is with the Bulldogs. What does he bring to this Mississippi State offense?
I mean, for one, it's speed, right? It's he's got track star speed, but everyone kind of knew that about him coming into this year, and you could see that in early games. The corners who were covering him were giving him plenty of space, off the line of scrimmage, because they didn't want to be burned. In that Arizona State game, I think his first touchdown was a comeback route on the outside because he had so much space. They were worried about both him and Anthony Evans on that side. And then he has enough space that he can catch the ball and then create separation on the inside of the field and, run the 50 yards to go score a touchdown, and did a similar thing on the play that won the game. So he's shown this season that he can do a lot more than just beat somebody downfield. But, as that is your primary weapon, on the outside, you still want to take advantage of that. And, expect to see them call that sort of play when they get around the 40, 50-yard line, because they've been able to hit on those. And there are a couple last week that I think Blake wants back, because he had Brennan wide open in the end zone for a touchdown that ended up being just out of his reach. So maybe they'll recalibrate for this week.
And we've talked about Blake Shapen. We've talked about Brenen Thompson. Those are 2 offensive players, obviously. Who's a name to know on this Bulldog defense?
There's quite a few, I would say. The safety room in general has really stuck out for them. So Brylan Lanier, he played on the outside at corner last year, and those abilities, he talked about it on Monday. They really showed through on his 2 interceptions against Florida. One of them was a play that Florida ran against them last year, and he jumped the route and got the interception. But he's there in a room with Isaac Smith, who also plays some snaps at linebacker. He's been the leading tackler for Mississippi State. I think he led the SEC in tackles last year. And then Hunter Washington and Jerron Manning also back there as defensive backs. And then on the outside, Kelly Jones has been a really good cornerback. I think he still has the lowest percentage or completion percentage in terms of one-on-one coverage as a corner in the SEC. So those guys definitely. And then, in the middle, pretty good linebacker room. I would say Jalen Smith has had a pretty good year. Zachary Tillman, though, is going to be out because he was suspended after a targeting call late in the Florida game. So might be a little shorthanded over the middle.
This is going to be an SEC Network broadcast. If you are watching back in Austin, it's 3:15 kickoff on Saturday. But if you're making the trip to Starkville, Texas has not been to Starkville since 1991. But if you're a Texas fan, you've ever listened to Vic Schaefer talk, he will tell you that the Bulldogs love the Bulldog fans love Mississippi State athletics from his time as women's basketball coach. I think baseball fans, the Texas baseball fans, went to Starkville last year, will say the exact same thing. Everyone I've talked to was pretty impressed with their 3 games on campus last year in Starkville. But you're a Starkville native. You obviously kind of grown up around this. What should Texas fans who make the trip this weekend expect at Davis Wade Stadium? I've heard of an open air press box. I've heard of cowbells. I might need some earplugs. What should people expect at the stadium this weekend?
Yeah, it's going to be loud. So it's usually 50 to 60,000 strong for big games like this, and it sounds like a lot more because of all the cowbells. It really does get loud. A lot of people or fans who I've talked to that are annoyed by that, fans of other teams, are like, what's the point? It's just so annoying. I was like, that is the point. It's really annoying. Not just for the coach and the players that are trying to get play calls in and have the hard count heard. Just in general, it kind of sticks in the air. So yeah, there is some pretty good food as well. It is a smaller town. I would say certainly the smallest in the SEC, and it's quite a bit smaller than Austin, but there's some good food if you want to make your way around downtown in the Cotton District. Yeah, all are welcome. It is a very hospitable place.
Well, that is Colin Damms with the Commercial Dispatch. Once again on Twitter at ColinTheShots95. You can read his work for the Dispatch at cdispatch.com. Colin, we appreciate the time. We look forward to seeing you at Davis Wade on Saturday, and we appreciate everyone else for tuning in. Deuces.
Thanks, Danny.